Hello. It's almost exactly 4 months since I moved into Rose Cottage. I moved in at the start of December. It's now nearly the end of March. It's a beautiful spring morning. I thought this might be a good opportunity to give you a complete garden update and take stock, and also talk to you about some of the plans I've got for the garden here at Rose Cottage. But before I do that, some housekeeping. I want to say thank you for subscribing. Thank you for all your comments and engagement, and also thank you for supporting me by buying products through my Amazon links. Every penny I make through this channel or via Amazon goes right back into the garden. I really appreciate your support. So let's get going on this garden tour. By the way, if you see a little thumbnail in the corner of the screen, that's because I've done a video on that particular topic. Let's get going. So we started off with the formal parterre here at the front of the cottage, and I designed this with the views from inside in mind. It's a lovely view from in there, looking over this symmetrical formal parterre. They do say that you should live in a property before you do anything too dramatic, but I was always very clear that I wanted a formal parterre here, so that's the first thing I got on with. In order to do that, I had to move a great big hydrangea from over there and a lovely big rose bush in the corner, and I cleared all the ground, and you can see videos on how to move a rose bush and a hydrangea. They're both doing very well, as you'll see in a moment. There's little Simba, he loves a path. I put that path down there because it's better than walking on gravel. And I've just got the agapanthus out of storage. They're going to love it here on this south-facing wall. So that was my first job, and that's virtually finished. I've just got a little bit of levelling up to do on this corner where it runs off. Now moving on, one of the next things I did was this lovely little exotic border to the side of the driveway. It's Trachycarpus Fortunei, Chinese windmill palm. They're very hardy palms. Great for keeping in the UK. It's lovely that because you see it as you drive in. That's the stone trough which I found at the front, and that's going to be planted up with alpines at some point in the near future. I brought those alpines from a previous house. I'm pleased because they've been in the pot, believe it or not, for nearly 15 years, and look how well they've done. So we'll give them a brand new life and a lot of well-drained gritty soil in this trough which I've inherited. So there's the parterre. There's the Trachycarpus border, there's the trough, there's the back door, there's little Simba, my pal, and along here, towards the back of the cottage, is where I'm going to plant a scented border. I want a scented border here because you're going to be walking past it along this path, which was already here. So I'm going to plant thyme in there, and herbs and rosemary and lavender in here. And that will be refilled. It took me a whole day to dig out the builder's rubble from in this border. And when I was doing that, I was quite lucky because I found the water pipe and also a drain pipe. It's a good point to note that whenever you're doing any work in the garden, find out where any pipes, electrical pipes, cables or drain pipes are before you start going at it with your pickaxe. So that path will lead along here, and eventually there will be, along where that piece of wood is, a fence or a windbreak or a privacy screen. And that's going to divide this part of the garden from the rear of the cottage. And I've just laid out the garden furniture here in the courtyard at the back just to see how much space I've got. I'm going to be putting in a bamboo screen here. You can see I've planted them in pots because bamboo is quite invasive. I'll be doing a video on that in the very near future. So this is going to be our eating, dining, drinking, sociable area at the back of the cottage. Then moving through, this area is either going to be decked or slabbed. Temporarily it's gravel. And then over there at the very rear of the cottage, in a very sheltered little courtyard, is going to be our jungle garden, full of our tree ferns and lots of other little ferns underplanted with these ferns and some hostas. And I'm going to put a circular patio there where that piece of wood is. And my father-in-law, who's a builder, is going to advise me on how to do that. These walls are wonderful. They're actually my neighbour's walls, but they absorb sunlight all day long and radiate it at night. So in these borders here, along the edge of these walls, we're going to put all our tropical plants, cannas and bananas and ensete. And they'll do really well here in this sunny but sheltered position. This is going to be a real sun trap. I might have to think about putting some kind of sun canopy on here, possibly one of those sail things that comes out on a rope. So that's the little courtyard at the rear of the cottage. It's a work in progress, as always, but we'll get there in the end. It's effectively divided into 3 zones, very shady at the back, full sun here, and a partial shade here in the shade of what I'm going to build, which will be a windbreak fence across this gap. I'll show you all these things as I do them in videos. And here is the piggery, where the pig used to live in days of old, and I've turned that into a tool shed. And at the back of the piggery is the pig pen. Look at this wall here, and over in that far corner there, there's a little arched doorway where the pig used to come and go. And look down there, a little hole in the wall, and that's where they used to feed the pig the slops. But anyway, I digress. Getting back to the garden design. This area here, which is covered in pebbles and boulders, I've already used many of these boulders on the exotic border underneath the Trachycarpus. It was handy that they were there, it saved me buying them. But I intend to take that all out, clear it all away, and build a little fish pool so that I can have the sound of running water just at the back of the courtyard there. So the next port of call is the compound at the rear of the garage. This is a fantastic little space just through this gate here. This shed has been brilliant. I've stored a lot of the succulent tender plants in there over the winter. My ladder. These turfs are from where I dug out the exotic border, and I'm going to be using them in a horticulture raised bed, which will be a forthcoming video. Moving around, these plants have been brought out of storage because it's getting quite warm and sunny now. So I've got them out to kind of harden them up a little bit, but if there's any chance of a real severe frost, they'll go straight back into the shed over there. These are the olive trees here, which I pruned in a recent video. These 2 were pruned last year. It was an experiment. Those 2 weren't pruned, and you can see the difference. These were all thick in the middle, and these 2 were quite sparse in the middle. But these 2 will thicken out like this, and very soon I'll have 4 lovely lollipop olive trees again. It's great that the previous owner has left me all these bits and bobs. I'll be able to use these in so many garden projects. Thinking of making a coal frame with those bricks. I'm not sure what I'll do with all that stone, but all these boulders are going to be fantastic around my wildlife pond. In the far corner of the lawn, we inherited this big mound of earth which has been covered in gravel, and right next to it along the edge here are some huge, I would say massive boulders. They really are enormous. I wouldn't be able to lift one of those on my own, but I will with some help. I'm going to take those away, and those are going to be the edge of my wildlife pond, which is going to go somewhere around here. What I intend having is a long diagonal view all the way across the lawn back to the cottage, so that you look out of the kitchen window straight down a long diagonal path into this corner. Here are the Buddles, which I demonstrated pruning, and you can see they're springing into life. Within a couple of months, those will be 10 foot tall and covered in lovely Buddleia blossom, the butterfly bush. And that's one of the reasons why I'm making this the wildlife area. If you remember, I left quite a few of the cuttings there in a pile to help with the insects and biodiversity. I'll also be having probably a beehive in this corner here. That's the hedgehog feeding station. I visited a wildlife hospital and was given some advice on making a hedgehog feeding station and a hedgehog house, which is going to be positioned there in the background in the shelter of the hedge, where the hedgehog can run along in peace. A huge pampas grass here. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to stay. It's all blown over in those storms that we had, and I'll probably be putting my vegetable plot here. I want a productive area in the garden, and because there are already some fruit trees, I've decided to locate it here. These are all the offcuts from the huge conifer which I removed. Those logs are going to be part of a log garden, a log ear for wildlife. I'll probably make some bean poles out of these long bits, and all the green bits won't go to waste. They'll be used as mulch or compost. And here is a raised bed. That's going to be removed, and the soil that's in that is going to be placed in the scented garden along that path there which I showed you before. And there is that huge conifer which I started to remove just before Christmas. It was an easy job taking the top off. It was massive. It went all the way up to the top of that telegraph pole there. You can watch the video. I've just about managed to undermine it. There's no more soil underneath. and I've cut all the roots, as you can see. So that is a massive stump sitting in a hole. The next challenge is to get that out of the hole. Happily, my neighbour has a tractor and he's very kindly offered to help me drag it off. I just want to bring it down here into the corner because eventually I'm going to do something with that. I'm going to make a stumpery fern garden, so I'll probably half bury it, leave bits sticking out and plant ferns into it. So that's a future project. And all that carbon that's stored in there won't be burnt off into the atmosphere, it'll stay there locked in. This raised bed here is where I've been planting things that I've had to transplant, and these are the roses which I moved here, and look, they're both coming back to life. Some new growth there on the side. So if you want to know how to transplant roses, watch the video. The hydrangea which I took out is doing really well in a pot in the compound. In terms of overall design for the garden, I don't want a garden which has lots of disparate ideas just scattered around. I want an overarching plan for the whole space, and I'm actually developing that now. I'm certainly going to be dividing this area up into rooms. I've already mentioned that I want a long diagonal path, which you can see from the kitchen window behind me. So that will be one of the things, and then I will probably divide that into smaller rooms, and each room will have its own theme, and it will be divided by hedges or barriers with gaps in that you can see through, using that conceal and reveal idea that you hear so much about. And that's us back to the start, back where we started with the Trachycarpus border. Hope you've enjoyed that garden tour and update. Once again, thank you for subscribing and commenting, and thank you for supporting me by buying products through my Amazon links. And hopefully I'll see you very soon for my next video.